Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. Okay, welcome to the next episode of Sausage on a Fork, and I am absolutely delighted to say that I have been joined by none other than Karen Lewis, who played Miss Roz Partridge. Karen, welcome to Sausage on a Fork.
Thank you, Neil. Lovely to be here.
Thank you for coming on. Okay, so what we'll do, Karen, is we'll start the way we start every episode, and if you can just tell us how you got into acting.
Well, that's an interesting question. I had always, after wanting to be a nurse and then drive a fire engine,
Right.
I quite early on at school thought, I like this. I like being on stage. And it sort of went from there. And I got a job quite early on as an ASM understudy, which was very helpful because in those days, way back, we're talking, 40 years ago, right. I say with horror, but also gratitude because I'm still here 40 years later. I got a job as an ASM understudy, and in those days, you had to be a member of Equity to work in the profession, and you had to have 40 weeks work outside London before you could get a full Equity card. So I went off on this job, which was a tour, and gave me 20 weeks of my 40. And that's how it all started, really. And then from there, I went up to rep in Derby and Leicester. And that segues on to why I did Grange Hill. If that was another question. While I was in at the Leicester Haymarket Theatre, I worked with the most wonderful writer, whose name was Anthony Minghella.
Oh, right.
And the late and very great Anthony Minghella, who many of your listeners probably won't know, but will know if I tell them that he won an Oscar for The English Patient in the 90s. Yeah. In the 80s, he was script editor for Grange Hill.
Yeah.
And he asked me, he said, would you like to be in Grange Hill?
Wow.
I'd love you to be. And I said, wow, are you writing the scripts? And he said, yeah, I'm script editor. So I said, well, then I'm in.
Brilliant.
He was a brilliant writer, wonderful man, a wonderful director, and sadly died way too early. Yes, that's how I got into acting, and that's how I got into Grange Hill.
Yeah, that's what this podcast is about, Grange Hill. But you'd done television acting before Grange Hill as well, hadn't you? You'd been in quite a few
I'd been in a few things, and I did a few episodes of God, I've completely forgot what it's called. What's the medical
Casualty.
Casualty, thank you so much. I have to warn you that I am severely jet lagged. So I've had about 2 minutes sleep in 4 hours. So if I'm somewhat inarticulate or my memory fails me, you'll know why. Anyway, thank you. I did Casualty. I did a series with Tom Wilkinson called Resnick, and then I did bits and bobs of the good old Bill, which was wonderful source of work for most actors, and unfortunately doesn't exist any longer. But I did that and a lot of theatre.
Right. Okay. So you've said there that obviously Anthony Minghella was largely responsible for you getting into Grange Hill. So were you aware of the programme at the time? Were you aware of how big it was?
Yes, I was aware of it, but I hadn't grown up with it because I was already grown up. and I really wasn't aware of its popularity and how distinguished it was as a series. And I think when I joined, it was a really golden time, because that was the time that so many issues were being looked at by Phil Redmond and his writing team. So I was there during the Zamo heroin addiction period, and there were a whole raft of other issues that were being looked at. My storyline being one of them, because I was introduced as a single mother, and at that time, I mean, you can't imagine it now.
No,
today,
it just doesn't seem real now, does it?
No, but then it was such a stigma to be an unmarried mother, and people were really frowned upon. Women were frowned upon. It wasn't as bad as in the 50s. And I was actually in a play about this when if girls got pregnant outside marriage, they were sent off to these dreadful homes where they had to have their babies, and their babies were then immediately taken away from them and given up for adoption. So we'd moved on from that, but it was still not really acceptable to have a child outside marriage. So, and that was my story. A lot of my storyline. So there were wonderful issues being addressed at that time in Grange Hill, and that was really very special for what was considered to be a children's program. It was on at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and yet I mean, the number of people that talked to me in the street, adults, people over 30, over 40. I mean, actually, which will seem ancient to the younger viewers. In fact, if I can just a little anecdote, when I was walking down a corridor at Elstree where we were filming it, and I overheard a couple of the pupils chatting, and one of them was saying to the other, "Oh no, she's 25, and you're well over the hill by the time you're 25."
No way.
So you know but and then they were still watching it. They recognized everybody, and they were following it, and it was I was amazed at how many people. I thought, what were you doing watching the telly at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? You were at work. But it was hugely popular, and I'm sure that people sort of rushed home or had a telly at the office or something.
I mean,
people watching it.
So that is a part of the question that I'm going to ask you from the guest competition that we do for each episode. Nick Rodway is the gentleman that won the guest competition, who correctly guessed that the last guest was going to be Claire Buckfield. And Nick's question to you is about joining the show. He said, as an actor, when you get a job in kids television, is it disappointing? Is that the word to use? Is it disappointing that you're in kids program, or do you look at it like, well, it's a job?
That's a really good question, and I think that at the time that I joined Grange Hill, it was slightly looked on that children's drama was probably not as prestigious as we deem adult drama. I think that's a very different attitude today. I think people are highly respectful of children's drama, and that was possibly because of Grange Hill, because Grange Hill was such a well-made and well-conceived and quite a progressive series, that it really gave huge, as I say, prestige to children's drama. And I then and now would not regard children's drama as any less worthy or or acceptable than to do as a job.
Yeah.
Than adult drama. I'm really happy. And yes, of course, everybody wants to work. So for most people, any job is better than no job.
Yeah.
But I would say that children's drama is on an equal footing. So children's drama is just as acceptable, and delighted to do it.
Brilliant. Okay, so we'll just talk a little bit about Grange Hill there, a bit more. So you joined in, well, it was series 9, so it would have been 85 when you joined. It went on air in 86, and you joined as Miss Roz Partridge, who was the history teacher and the head of the 3rd year, as it was then, year 9, they call it these days. And so you were working with people like Jonathan Lambeth from the pupil side, Danny Kendall, Ant Jones, people like that. But it was a time where Grange Hill was changed a bit, and it wasn't just about the children. There was a lot of stuff, as you've mentioned there, about the teachers and teacher storylines. And when you look at the cast that played the teachers at that time, it's a really strong cast, isn't it? People you're working with there, the fact that you had like Gwyneth Powell and Michael Sheard and Nicola Donnelly and Michael Cronin and Lucinda Kay, and it just goes on and on. There's so many.
Don't forget George A. Cooper.
No, one can forget George A. Cooper. I mean, Mr. Griffiths is a legend in everything he does, isn't he? But yeah, he was tremendous. And was there anyone out of that core that you were sort of particularly close to, or best friends, should I say, like anything?
Well,
like
I was actually, yes, very good, very close friends with, and still am, with Lucinda Curtis, who played the PE teacher, I think.
Mrs. Regan, yeah.
Mrs. Regan, yeah. We were great mates, and Gwyneth, I felt close to Gwyneth Powell. She was really the mother of the company, if you like, at that time. And very professional and very engaging actress. So I worked again later in the theatre with Michael Cronin. So that was sort of nice to carry that on. So yeah, there were a few that Jeffrey Cassoon. There were a few that we were sort of the same age and or similar ages, and really got on very well.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so, and obviously, we have mentioned the fact that the storyline that you had, it was sort of a big scandal at the time, shall we say. But it's interesting, and it's the way it's written was really good, because there was just little, when you watch it back as an adult, there's little seeds planted here and there. The fact that Miss Partridge couldn't always stay for staff meetings, and or her mother was sick. There was little things thrown in like that, and you just think, yeah, that's really, really clever. The fact that it was done, and for the kids program like that. To have those little sort of seeds planted, because there's one where she couldn't stay for a staff meeting because her mother was sick, and then a couple of episodes later, she's got a really bad cold, and it's Mr. Bronson says to her, "Did you get that from your mother?" And she was like, Miss Partridge is like, "Well, what are you talking about?" "Well, I thought your mother had been sick." "Oh yeah, she had the flu." And it's just little things like that you just think that's really, really clever, the way it was done. And can I ask about Michael Sheard? I mean, because obviously, all professional actors, but everyone says just what a great fella he was.
He was also, if Gwyneth was the mother of the company, he was the father.
Right.
And he was a wonderful, if I dare say, almost old-fashioned type of actor. That sort of the jacket and bow tie persona that he had as his character in Grange Hill, as the French teacher, and I think, was he deputy head at one point?
Yeah.
And that was sort of almost how he was in life. And he was always taking people under his wing in a rather sort of headmasterish, pedagogic kind of way.
Yeah.
And just saying, he'd say things to you like, when you do this scene, just move slightly to the left. Watch, move slightly to the left of your mark, and then you'll get your key light. He was great like that.
Yeah.
And full of anecdotes, because he'd done a lot of work.
Yeah.
He'd done a lot of work in film with. He talked about working with Robert Redford, and other sort of great movie stars of the time, and so it was fun. He was a great teller of anecdotes, and he was fun to work with.
I mean, I've mentioned this before on the podcast. There was a behind the scenes documentary made about Grange Hill, and he's in the makeup room, and you see him turn from Michael Sheard into Mr. Bronson, and it's bizarre when you watch it. It's like he's just Michael Sheard, then he just straightens up his bow tie, puts the wig on, and he's just completely it's amazing to watch. And I just think that's some talent, isn't it? To just be able to do that just by straightening a bow tie and putting a wig on and just being a completely different person.
But I tell you what, don't ever underestimate costume.
No.
In a drama, because it can make you feel suddenly that you're the character.
Yeah.
So when people win awards for costume and makeup, they really deserve it, because they really do help the performance.
Yeah.
And that really worked for Michael, I'm sure. That bow tie, that very buttoned up character.
Oh, you've mentioned there, you were there at the time of Zamo, and that storyline, and that was huge, wasn't it? Because it crossed everything from like the kids' TV to adult TV, and everyone knew about it. And during the research for this interview, I always watch like little clips and things and bits of episodes, and the episode where it's discovered that he is on drugs. You have a small scene in that episode with Lucinda Curtis, Liz Regan in her house, and it's just again, it's just talking about kids and being a single parent, and you again, Miss Partridge makes reference to the fact that it's different for Miss Regan because she's divorced, and you say it's something like single parents or unmarried mothers will have it worse, believe me, and then it's left. But I just think it's nice. It must be nice to have just a small scene in an episode which is regarded as like a big piece of British television history, the fact that it's the Zamo episode. And I just think that must be nice just to have that little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, it's to be involved in good quality drama, however much or little you have to do, just to be a part of it is extremely rewarding and a privilege, because there isn't always a lot of work for people to be involved in great drama. There's a very small pool of actors and actresses. I wouldn't say actors and actresses, but actors. There's a very small group that work all the time, and probably when the public's watching television, we don't really notice that. But if you make an effort to notice it, you'll see that the same people turn up over and over and over again, which is because they're very talented, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But the repertory pool, if you like, of actors in any country, I guess, but I can only speak for this country, is actually very small. Right. And so if you are involved in a prestigious drama, a well-written drama, it's a privilege, and it's wonderful. And I'm very proud to be in it, largely because I think it's so well written and so well acted by Lee McDonald, who played Zamo. I thought he was wonderful in it, and it really caught the public attention. And then, of course, as you know, went on to the Just Say No campaign, and many of the cast, the young cast, going off to Washington, to the White House to meet Nancy Reagan, and it was a huge subject at that time, and I'm I can only say yes. I'm really glad to have been a part of it, even though I wasn't involved with that specifically with that storyline. It was just great to have been in that episode.
Brilliant. Okay, so on social media and stuff, when in the Grange Hill fan sites and things, and when they talk about teachers that you would have liked, Miss Partridge is one of those that people would have liked to have had in their school. She was that type of character. She did have the kids' best, interest at heart. She put the kids first a lot of the time. And there's one bit where the two of the girls, Cheryl and Louise Webb, their father had died, and she went to visit them. Now, Cheryl Webb was played by Amara Santi, who is now this amazing director, award. Did you ever have any kind of inkling that she would go on to do anything like that?
Honestly, no.
Right.
Because you didn't really, the actors that were the children, the kids, you just didn't know, and you didn't know what they would want to do afterwards, whether they would want to continue in this insane profession or whether they'd want to do something sensible and reliable. But so no, I didn't know. And actually, my son, my youngest son, who's an actor, has worked with her. And she said she remembered me, so I'm really chuffed to hear that. But no, I wasn't aware that. Although I do remember thinking, oh, she's good.
Yeah,
I do remember thinking that she's very talented, but not that she would go on to be such a celebrated director. No.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so then your storyline was the fact that Miss Partridge had a little boy called Simon, and we meet Simon, and then the worst pupils to have found out. It was Imelda Davis, Helen Kelly, and Sharon, the Terror Hawks. So obviously, news spread pretty much straight away, and even the kids were shocked. There was a line, "Don't tell me we've got an unmarried mother on the staff," and that's from a child. So that's, as you said, that stigma was there, and the fact that she was going to hand their notice in for it and all that, but Mrs. McCluskey wouldn't have it, would she? She refused. Refused to accept it. And then that was sort of the end of the series then, because they said, we're not accepting your resignation. We'd rather hand our resignation in than you leave type thing. So that was the end. But then there was also the fun run at the very end of the series.
Yeah.
And Simon was with Miss Partridge, while Miss Partridge was dressed as a princess, I believe.
That's right. I remember that day. It was a great day. It was sort of sports Grange Hill Sports Day.
Yeah, that's so. Then the next series came about, series 10. It was filmed 1986, but went on 1987. And Miss Partridge has been promoted to the head of sixth form, but you weren't in this series as much as you'd been the previous series. Now I know why. But do you want to explain what the situation and some of the difficulties you might have had for filming that series?
Yeah. Well, the long and short of it was that I was pregnant and expecting our first child, and I went sort of at the end of the first series. I went to our producer, Ron Smedley, who sadly died not that long ago. But I went to him and I said, I'm going to have a baby, and you can't have the old slag getting pregnant again. So I'm going to have to leave the series. And he I was so flattered because he pretty much begged me to stay on
Right.
and said, please stay on. We'll write your storylines around it. So, I mean, how could I refuse that? That was
Yeah.
a fabulous offer. And so I stayed on. Unfortunately, they didn't write it into they didn't write anything into the storyline because I guess they couldn't for the reason
Yeah.
I just posited is that
Yeah.
you can't have her pregnant again. I mean, what once is enough. So they didn't make any reference to the fact that Miss Partridge was pregnant. So I got fatter and fatter, and they promised to film me sort of just from the neck up, really.
Right.
But they didn't. So you could see this, as my husband so delicately put it, I looked like 3 ripe watermelons walking down the corridor. And I said, could we not have a scene where somebody mentions, gosh, Roz, you're putting on a bit of weight, or have her snacking cream donuts in the staff room? None of that happened. So unfortunately, I was filmed just getting chubbier and chubbier. But the reason, obviously, that I wasn't in it as much was that I was didn't have the same energy really towards the end of my pregnancy. Right. So yeah. That was the reason.
Because it's strange, obviously. I've been going through it and watching it, and there's a lot of Miss Partridge spent a lot of time in the sixth form common room.
Yeah.
I'm guessing a lot of that was because there was comfy seats in there.
Yeah.
Because having been a sixth former in the past, when the head of our sixth form came in, no one wanted them to be in there. It was just like, no, and we'd all leave. I'm guessing that's what it was. And there's also a bit where the Danny Kendall storyline came in, and and they were raising money, and Mr. Bronson decided the staff needed to do something, and he'd be the treasurer for the fundraising committee. And then he asked Miss Partridge to be the secretary, which she agreed to. But then she went missing for 7 episodes as well.
God, you just reminded me of all that. I'd forgotten that.
Yeah. And that was your last series at Grange Hill. Obviously, you said you were pregnant. Did you then take a break from acting?
I took a break from screen, right, and theatre. What I did, because my husband was working up in Stratford, and I was down with looking after a little one on my own, so I couldn't really go off around the country, right, to work. So I just started doing voiceovers, and did that. That was sort of quite a great career, really, to do voiceovers, because I could be with I had another one, another son, so I could be with the children and work. Right. And yeah, I mean, I did continue to do quite a lot of theatre, actually, but it was when they were a little bit older. So.
Yeah, I mean, because you did do other bits, film and TV and stuff, and you were in Let Him Have It, which was a massive thing because of the storyline and the issue that dealt with. That was like a really sensitive thing to be in. And George Christopher is in that as well. Ziggy Greaves, he was in a scene in that.
Oh, I didn't know that, was he?
Yeah. So
Ziggy.
He was in that as well, because obviously he told me when he was on that. Tom Bell, isn't it?
It's
Christopher Eccleston.
Thank you, Christopher Eccleston. Yeah. And Tom Bell, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and because Aaron had been on Grange Hill, Ziggy was talking to Tom Bell about that. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And is it too? Were you in Chaplin? Is that right?
Yes, I was in Chaplin. Yeah.
Brilliant.
With Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. Brilliant. Did you get to speak to him, work with him, anything?
Yeah, I had a little scene with him, and he is the most enchanting man.
Yeah.
But by his own admission, and this is no secret, he was grappling with a very serious drug problem at the time, and I know that they had to do a lot of takes.
Right.
But then when they got the right one, he was utterly brilliant.
Yeah.
I think he's just the most monumental talent. And of course, he's come through that period of his life and is, well, we know, one of the biggest movie stars in the world.
Yeah, you've mentioned the fact that you did like The Bill and Casualty, but you also did A Touch of Frost as well.
Oh yeah.
And did you get to work with Gwyneth Paltrow on that? Was she in anything that you did on that? Because I know she was in that every now and again.
No, I didn't.
Right.
No.
Judge John Deed was another one. And so, do you still act now?
Yes, I do. Right. I was had a nice little cameo in a film that is probably coming out this year, I would think.
All right.
Called oh God, I can't even remember what that was called now.
The jet lag's kicking in now.
honestly, I have in the last 48 hours, I think I've had 2.5 hours sleep. So forgive me for brain fog.
If I may just interject here, Karen has since been in touch to tell me that the working title for the film is Surprised by Oxford. Now, back to the interview.
Yes, and I did a voice in a Czech animated film with my son, actually. It was the first time we've ever worked on the same project together. Brilliant. And I do I mean, it is very much bits and bobs nowadays. It's not, sadly, it's not a long-running series, which would be very nice indeed. But no. But I do other things outside acting because you have to, frankly.
Yeah.
Unless you are one of that tiny pool of people that works all the time, you have to do other things. So I do other things.
Yeah, can you? All right.
Yeah, I do some work in football. I worked with a company that do what we call Legends games. So it's international players playing charity matches. So we organised an England v Germany game to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the World Cup. England lost, by the way, in our game. And the one that I'm most proud to have been associated with was a game called the Game for Grenfell, where we put on a game at Loftus Road, and it was to raise money, which we did. We raised over £1 million for the survivors of Grenfell. And it was the most phenomenal day with everybody that we asked took part.
Yeah.
So you had Jose Mourinho playing in goal, and you had Ollie Murs scoring the winning goal, and it was everybody you've ever thought of.
Yeah.
Every celebrity in the world took part, and every great ex-international took part. So it was a phenomenal day, and we're hoping, if this comes off, I mean, watch this space, it may or may not, but we're at the moment hoping to do a game for Ukraine, which will be a big global event. So that's what I'm busy with when I'm not acting.
That's brilliant. Now, you've mentioned your husband, you've mentioned your son, and obviously, I don't know how many people know this listening, but you are in quite a big sort of acting family, and your father-in-law, just one of the biggest legends on stage and screen, Mr. Richard Attenborough. Can I ask, were you in awe of him? Like, so was sort of when you first met him?
Oh yeah, hugely. I mean, I remember going to to have lunch at their home the first time I met them, I was shaking. I was so nervous to meet this huge.
I mean, I suppose it's bad enough when you're meeting a parent for the first time anyway. But for it to be him as well, it's like it's perfectly understandable that you were that nervous as well. Because I mean, he's in like The Great Escape and Jurassic Park, two of my favorite films of all time. And was he just everything that you would have expected him to be? Because I just expect him to just be the nicest person in the world, basically. Like
he was, well, I adored him, and I think he was an extraordinary human being. Many people described him as a great man, and he was in so many respects a great man. I mean, he was human, so like everybody else, he got tired or he got grumpy or he all those things. But his achievements and his generosity of his time, of his talents was immense, and it was fascinating to see the work that he did and the life that they led.
Yeah,
I mean, he was quite an extraordinary man, and of course, his brother, who's thank God still with us, is equally the most extraordinary human being.
Yeah.
Quite a fascinating family to be a part of.
Yeah. Did you ever talk shop?
Oh yeah.
All right. Okay.
I mean, often he would show us the rushes of or a film that was just being put together, and we'd see various stages, and he'd ask our opinions of, what do you think? What do you think about the editing? What do you think about, is there anything that we should edit out? Or so it was great.
Yeah. I think just to have been around him must have been something, but then like to be in the family as well, just amazing. And like you say, to have David Attenborough in the family as well is incredible. Like, so, okay. So, Karen, we are coming towards the end of the interview. I have got a few questions, and they're all related to Grange Hill.
Yeah.
Okay. So, last year it was on the news and things that there was going to be a Grange Hill movie in the works. Phil Redmond's, involved and stuff. What do you think of the idea?
I think it's a great idea.
Right.
Really. I mean, I don't know when they say there's going to be a film. I have absolutely no idea what Phil Redmond has in mind in terms of what sort of period he would cover and whether it would be a completely new story, a script that doesn't look back on the series, but has a completely new take on it. I don't know, but I'm fascinated to find out.
If you were asked, would we see a return of Miss Partridge?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. That's what we want. Brilliant.
I love it. Absolutely. Miss Partridge with children and maybe even grandchildren. Now. Yes, please.
Oh, tremendous. Okay. So, other than Miss Partridge, who was your favourite character in Grange Hill?
Adult or child?
Either. Completely up to you. Both, if you want.
Well, I guess because my favourite. Well, do you mean the part that I'd like to play, or
you could say that. Just anything, really. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't really a part that I'd like to play, although I would have liked to have played it when I was younger. But actually, it was a part of Zamo because his journey was so devastating, really, and moving and important that I think it was one of the great storylines of children's drama.
Definitely. Okay. So my final question then: why do you think there is still such affection for Grange Hill?
I think for all the reasons we've talked about, because I think it resonates with people's lives even today. It resonates, doesn't it, with what people have been through, are going through, and it's the human condition, and it addressed all those aspects of the human condition, which, like Shakespeare, is infinite. It's and appetite for our times and any time. So I think Grange Hill did that and still does that.
Yeah.
Which is why it has so much affection.
Karen, thank you so much for coming on.
It's such a pleasure. It's been great talking to you, Neil. Thanks so much for having me.
Not a problem, not at all. No, it's been wonderful hearing your experiences and your memories. And thank you so much again for coming on. And for anyone who's listening, I'll speak to you next time. Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.